Hello and welcome.
Hi.
This is episode 6 of the Discussioneers podcast, where the
Get
bonus action.
very,
Sorry, we're coming
get
off
very
of a very
angry.
heated debate. But yeah, this is the bonus action. This is when we, no, it wasn't really a debate. It was just anger, just sheer anger in podcast form. But yeah, this is the bonus action where we take in questions from you guys and also talk about whatever the hell we want. D&D related, of course, or just tabletop gaming in general. Before we open it up to the questions, I thought I had on the little break here um, that I want to ask you
Oh, so
guys.
that's what I want to touch on.
Okay, great. Well, the thing I want to start with to jump right into the bonus action here. What do you guys? What's your thoughts on the D&D power creep? That's what I want to talk about. This is an issue that you commonly see with role playing games and just kind of games in general that have an expanded lifetime of increasingly released content, where you just run into a situation where the newer shit just ends up being better than the old shit. So I'm curious on what your guys' thoughts on the power creep. Do you think it exists? Are you worried if it does exist? If it's bad for the game? What's your guys' stance? We'll start with Nate.
I think for D&D specifically, it's starting to show. Um, I don't think like it's inevitable. Like a lot of people are like, well, the longer the game's lifespan lasts, like it's inevitable that eventually we're going to run out of ideas in one direction and we have to go a different direction and that's just going to be better. I don't think that's necessarily true. Just be more creative. If that means hiring more creative people and writers, then do that because people are going to flock to the new good content. And so there's no reason not to.
Hmm.
Um I think it's a common thing in a lot of different games, but it's just because of I don't want to say like they're not being creative, but
No, definitely not. Not
honestly
not
that's
in the case of
that's
D&D.
that's what's happening.
Yeah. Yeah. Good point. Bryce, how
Yeah,
about
I
you? What's your
mean,
thoughts?
so the issue we talked about this briefly as well when I was giving examples on Starfinder, for instance, which is a tamer version of Pathfinder for much of the reason that Pathfinder has been out for such a long time now that they had the old style of publishing where they released a whole bunch of like extended stuff, but those systems are complicated enough that there's a lot more room, there's a lot more math and mechanics to have free roam with. While 5th edition was a very tight and focused game system that even at first publication, without some of the new stuff like Elemental Evil and Xanathars, like everything was more or less covered, right? Even Artificer is borrowing from a lot of stuff, right? It's a lot of wizard spells and whatnot. Um, and some mechanics you could argue, like the artillerist or whatever that gets the turret. That's almost like a form of spiritual weapon, just modified, right? There's only so many things you can mechanically do when your system is limited to what 5th edition has with its action, bonus action, reaction, all that stuff. You'll have so many things you can do on your turn. You only have so many conditions you can place. There's only so many things on your character sheet that you can modify. Where before you start, the only thing you can go with is either doing more or like dealing out more numbers, right? And I feel like the only way, like in my opinion, I think the power creep is there, but I think there's a potential for seeing a lot more content, but I don't know if it's the design philosophy they want to go for because I think it falls in line with the old style of publication, which is what um I wanted to touch on. Kind of the same idea was if you go back to fourth and 3.5 and whatnot, you didn't have all these specialized or specially named books, right? That were kind of a mix of things. You had Player's Handbook 1, Player's Handbook 2, Player's Handbook 3, and they each were just here is some races and here are some classes that usually kind of coincided. Like in fourth edition, you had it was either like Player Handbook 2 or 3 was here psionics and I think it was like marshals. So you had some special fighters and you had a bunch of psionic classes, right? I feel like, well, mechanically there isn't a lot they can change. Like, they tried with these sonic spells, like, oh, this gives a bunch of disadvantages, and this is, they're all intelligence saving throws and stuff. How would you guys feel about classes that did the same stuff as everyone else, just at different um time periods, right? Or in different mixes, where instead of having this very tight class system that we have in fifth edition, where the roles are very defined and there's not a lot of overlap aside from like spell casting, having, oh, well, these two classes can kind of do the same thing, just they have some slightly different secondary abilities or secondary roles, right? And it becomes much more of forming a party of understanding there are some duplicates of a sort. You just have to like work with your group to not, to be careful around that.
I don't think it's a terrible idea. It doesn't fit with Dungeons and Dragons.
I agree.
It's all about having your time to shine. This is what my wizard class does. This is what my rogue does. I'm a thief, and this is what I do. And I think that's just how D&D is and will probably always be.
I mean, it's a difficult thing, and I agree to your point, Bryce, where, it's one of those things that because we have such a simplest, or I shouldn't say simplistic, but definitely a simpler approach to the design than other
It's
options out there.
streamlined.
It's streamlined, yeah. The streamlined approach makes it, harder to develop a lot of variety for, and that's kind of the, that's kind of
the bane.
It's the one bane to the system. It's so easy to pick up and learn compared to other games. It's not as intimidating, but it does limit to an extent your freedoms and creativity. Now, to that point, I what's it called? Completely just lost my train of thought. I'm so upset about that previous discussion. Fuck.
Well, I will say I think that is also another reason that it couldn't go that way, is because the system itself is so streamlined that the classes have to be so varied.
Right.
Okay. You're just playing the same thing over and over again.
I agree. And so, yeah, on to the point a minute ago. So my biggest issue when you have classes that, have subclass options, or when you start tying things in that can do what other classes do, there's options in the game right now for 5th edition specifically here, where, there's a whole multi-classing optional rule. And so for someone now to take a class that exists now and to be able to dip into, and I say that word and I hate it, but to be able to have a, say a rogue that, your rogue learned in magics and whatnot, and I guess maybe that's a bad example because it's the arcane trickster, but maybe you're a little bit more studied and you want to start multi-classing into like a wizard or something and start having, these other options. You're taking these other options by directly leveling into that class, but there's a penalty there, right? Because you're never, assuming your game goes to the max levels of the game, right, or of the spectrum, or even if it doesn't, if it only goes to like 10 or whatever, you'll never have the 10th level ability rogues. You are sacrificing, that many levels of rogue in that particular play for taking levels into another class. So by you offering subclasses, then the only trade-off, versus instead of getting rid of the trade-off of whole levels into that class for power, you are just basically saying, I'm taking this subclass rather than this subclass, which is a choice everybody's going to make anyway. So now you're taking a class that you can take as far as your campaign's going to go. You don't have to worry about sacrificing levels of power to take levels and lower levels in another class, and you're still doing the same shit, right? Some of them it works. With the rogue, they have the arcane trickster, the eldritch knight for the fighter, but they limit it to a capacity, and it's okay. But some of it wouldn't work. Like you wouldn't want your fighter to have a subclass where they're doing monk shit, because then monks are gonna hate it. Your monk player is gonna hate it. There is certain things that, there's some things that work if you can put enough limitations there, but there's certain things that just can't. It can't, because you run into the same. We talked about this a little bit on the actual episode of the podcast, but the main reason when the Unearthed Arcana came out for the Mystic is because all of the options that were available within the subclass's design stepped on almost every single existing class's toes, and that was the biggest issue. Is there was no limited niche where the mystic fit in. It could do everything and anything. As long as they built it anything, then your rogue was pointless or wizard was pointless, blah, 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 blah. And that, I think, is going to be the biggest obstacle if they ever released it anyway, because in a way, a Scion, no matter what system or non-system or whatever the hell they're going to do with it if they did, right, would still, in a sense, feel like a spellcaster. So how do you make it different, right? But I know I've been talking, but onto the original topic of, the whole issues or whatnot of the power creep. I'm a little concerned. I mean, and also torn. A lot of the subclasses we're getting, a lot of the content that Wizards is posting up for D&D has been really great. I mean, we've had some great options in like Xanathars and a lot of the subclasses that have been in Unearthed Arcana that will most likely, by the looks of it, appear into a future supplement book are
Hopefully
pretty
not the
cool.
spells.
Yeah, right. But yeah, there is some cool stuff there, and I like it. I love it. I want more juice. I want more flavor. We're designing our own systems that are almost done, and that's just juice. It's flavor. It's fun. It's different. But at the same time, you feel like you're kind of shitting a little bit on if you make things too good or too different. Then your existing classes are pointless to play, and that just feels like if the whole goal, let's put it this way, if the whole goal to designing new subclasses or classes or whatever is to add more variety, then it needs to feel like variety, because if the new shit is just better than the old shit, that's not variety. It's just saying I have group A and group B, rather than being able to choose effectively between both groups. That's variety. But if group B is just better than group A, there's no reason to pull from group A, so you're still just limited to group B. That's not variety. That's just changing what door you're going in.
Right. You might as well just have a new edition of the game at that point.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Which
soon.
nobody wants, because then you have to get rid of all your source books and blah 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 blah. But yeah,
it is interesting though. It feels like they've written themselves kind of almost in a corner when it comes to content. Like they could publish campaign books for like infinitely, right? That's something that's easy to come up with. But when it comes to additional content, I think races are a bit easier as well, because those can overlap a lot. Like no one's gonna care if a couple of races overlap a bit.
Yeah, like you literally have an elf and a half elf. Like they're the same. It's the same thing. Come on.
Yeah.
One lives less long.
And the abilities can be, you definitely have some races which are better than others. That's just kind of like the case. I mean, that's kind of specific on what you're playing, but like anyone can benefit from like a tiefling, right? Being able to cast Hellish Rebuke for free once is nice. You just get to reaction do some damage.
Sure.
But definitely subclasses and classes, like you're right that there's only so much even just in universe that they can pull from thematically, and then limited even further by mechanically of just what's already a basic or a streamlined version of the game. And then now they're trying to come up with, well, we already have a pretty concise version of spellcasting. If we're going to do psionics, why not just try and, crowbar it into that? And it comes off as one, now you're directly comparing it because you see, oh, this is a spell. You're going to compare it to all the other spells. Versus if this was a separate ability that
Right.
I think you're right, maybe that, like, for instance, with the characters that got Mage Hand invisible, if it just said the exact same like text as Mage Hand and didn't say Mage Hand at any point, I would have been slightly more okay with it, just because there wasn't that immediate comparison in my mind between this and everyone else.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you guys can find that discussion in the main episode, but yeah, I don't know. It's definitely difficult, and I mean you can't fault Wizards for they're gonna get it wrong sometimes, right? I mean that's just the nature of design. When you have complex RPGs like this, balance is, I mean, nothing I don't think is ever gonna be completely balanced, but there's definitely things that you can do to make it closer to that gap. But I don't know.
Yeah. So kind of on this note then, Giddy asks in chat, they like the idea of a non-magical gadgeteer, and your thoughts on that. Which we have kind of bits of this, right? We've seen kind of pulling from two very different things, but you had the Spellless Ranger that they posted briefly, and then they had they have the gnome has an existing like tinkering ability for like minor stuff, and now they have the artificer, which is tied in with spell casting. I would love to see a artificer subclass that doesn't have spells and just instead focuses entirely on, just mechanical
Just
stuff. But that
inventions.
definitely strikes more as like a steampunky thing. Because even like
Sure.
Eberron, which is an advanced setting for D&D, is still highly magic. Like that's
Yeah,
where their science
it's like
comes from.
Harry Potter meets Dungeons and Dragons. It's
Uh, I mean, I like the idea. I don't think. I mean, I think that's something that you would probably only see in like a homebrew setting, though. I mean, look at, for instance, there was high demand for a ranger that was spellless. And I think there was actually an unearthed arcana that attempted it, but they didn't end up going through with it. They ended up not being liked. But the overall consensus was, if you want a spellless ranger, just be a fighter. It essentially does the same shit.
Or just
kind
flavor
of.
your stuff to not be spells.
Right, but
Really.
so
Because that's what the issue, like Spellless Ranger, their like first ability was they had like a healing thing. It was like, well, you could just be a ranger, cast Cure Wounds, and say you're using medicine. Right? It doesn't have to be a spell.
yeah, so I don't think it'll be anything. It's a cool idea. I mean, and there's a lot of really cool ideas for our full classes. I don't think it'll be anything that will be posted, unfortunately, though, because they typically try, at least from what I can tell, when a full class is going to release, it's enough different, either flavor wise or mechanically wise or whatever, from other classes. I mean, at this point, the artificer is the inventor class, right? So a gadgeteer would be too on the nose. If
I would say
anything,
if
they
you
would
want to
probably
play that, play an artificer and just flavor your spells to not be spells.
Well, I mean, I think
cast fireball, throw a grenade.
Yeah,
that's kind of
that's
the thing.
kind of what they.
Anyway,
that's what
right?
they want you to do, really.
Yeah, I mean, like existing wise, that is. I mean, like for our games, right? Tarek, when he casts fireball, right, it's like a special shot that he does. Like he does like the whole like mortar type thing, and that's cool flavor. And it's not mechanically different, but it's again, it's flavor wise different.
I think that's what they want anyway, because the artificer, right? Their focus is their tools, so everything is coming out of your tools. So I think that's the point. But yeah.
Yeah, and again, maybe this is on the same line again of like when they put it in the same box as spell casting rather than calling it something different, it immediately draws the mind to, oh, these are just spells.
Right.
This is
and
like
that's hard to do because you're playing a game that is highly magical. That's why you don't see a whole lot of like low magic settings, is because like the game is made around these very powerful people being able to cast very powerful and cool spells.
Yeah.
If you want to do low magic, play a different system, because that's just D&D isn't really based around. You could do it, and again, we've had this discussion as well. You can do anything with D&D, but that doesn't mean you should.
Sure.
Certain games are good for certain things.
Giddy did ask too, and maybe you can shed insight, or maybe we're just gonna have to move on from this question. But he asked about our opinions on the new human variants.
I think that's an Eberron thing.
Yeah, do you have your book on hand? Because I don't have it in reach. And I was gonna see.
I hate variant human. It doesn't.
I love variant.
Why are there different versions of human if one is just better than the other? That's the power creep. One is better than the other.
Well, to be fair, that was okay. Well, that was initially really. It was at least it didn't come out.
And
after.
it's initially stupid. As I play a variant human in
right.
Well, yeah,
in a game because it's better.
I'm just curious on if I think I briefly, because I haven't read through the full book yet, but I think they briefly did.
I don't know the new stuff.
They did do something with variant humans. I just don't know. Are they mechanically different, or what's the sitch there?
I'm trying to look. I mean, I think it ties to do with the dragon marks, but what I'm looking at, it doesn't necessarily give you it for free. So, at least, the example he gives is House Orion or Orion, which it marks as there's 5 different dragon marks appearing among the humans, reflecting their dominant status among the races of Corvair, such as the mark of passage aids the humans of House Orion in operating lightning rails and blah blah, which is just, I think as a feature you can take a dragon mark, which is like some spell casting and whatnot. It's almost like a sorcerer type thing, but I don't think you necessarily get those for free. As far as like, if you're not talking about mechanically, flavor wise, I like the idea of Game of Thrones style. Various houses have kind of like their own heritage that has like actual like meaning other than just like where they're from. Like there's actual like magic involved. I think it's a neat idea that there's almost like my mind goes to Dragon Age Inquisition, even though it's not necessarily the same kind of thing. But like they have these marks that are magical and are tied to their bloodline, so it's kind of a mark of prestige and are powerful. Like, oh, my family can cast fireball
Right.
because you're part of this house.
Interesting.
Yeah, I do like the idea. I think even just to compare it to D&D, hill giant, mountain giant, like just that type of thing is like
Yeah.
Yeah.
there are the different areas
And
that you can
honestly,
come from, and they do different things.
it's necessary considering humans are such a common thing, and maybe it's just biased because I am one, but they're kind of boring, just as
Yeah.
is. You know, you don't want to go to like, oh, we're now in this desert kingdom, and it's just it's the same.
It's a lot of
Hello, adventurers! Welcome to the desert.
Yeah. I,
I am from Finland, apparently, and I live in the desert.
We're desert kingdom. Hello. Anyways, going into for trying to knock out a couple of questions we have from the Discord. Bernhardt and Gracious kind of asked similar questions. So Bernhardt asks, "What do you have the most fun designing as a DM for your games?" And then Gracious added, "What do you have the least of, least fun?" Starting with, I guess, let's go, BB.
Oh.
say the question one more time.
What do you have the most fun designing for as a DM for your games? And then what do you have the least amount of fun?
Designing. Ooh, that's a good question. Man, I think the most fun designing is, even though I don't get to do it as much as I like, I do have the most fun designing a dungeon. Very classic dungeon crawly, setting up combat encounters, puzzles, and whatnot. That's my favorite part
Mood
of
for
it,
a good
of
dungeon
the gig.
crawl.
Not to say that I don't love, setting up story elements and NPC encounters and blah blah blah. Just when I am sitting down and designing something, I have more fun designing a dungeon and coming up with cool ways to, a theme to the dungeon, different puzzles that might interact different rooms. I don't know. My creativity juices always flow way more frequently when I'm in that creative space.
Yeah, a quick tangent as well on that. I've definitely found there is something much more relaxing about smaking a dungeon because at least for our games, which are pretty open, you know where your players are and what they're going to be doing next. Basically, like it's a very contained environment
That's
you can
true.
control.
For
Nice.
convenience sake,
Yeah, you can
sake.
you can literally just say no. Nope. There's some reason you can't teleport out. Sorry.
Even that, just what the next couple rooms are. They can't just be like,
Right.
oh, we're gonna walk southeast.
Mhm.
Like
Right, that's true. Yeah, it's a
Anyways,
little bit more confined and
what about your least the fun thing you have the least fun developing for your game,
yeah, that's easy.
if anything?
Anything that I have to do on the spot.
Huh, it's,
The parties, they're on a quest and they're like, wait, maybe this person knows some more information that's going to help us, and we're going to teleport to him. And I'm like, well, what does he know? Where's he been? Well, fucking yeah, like the moment you get, and it happens all the time. You're in a session and your players do something. I mean, you could be a dick and say, no, you can't do it because of reasons. Or you have to just make up shit on the fly. You can't railroad them. You make up shit on the fly, and it's hard. I get so stressed because then, especially at the end, whatever I pulled out of my ass at the time, I have to look back and be like, does this conflict with any existing thing? Do I need to change?
What you came up with? Like,
do I need to change certain upcoming canon elements to make sure that this, this thing that they experience, this person they talk to, their knowledge is feasible? It's frustrating.
Sure. What about you, Nate?
Well, I don't have too much experience, but I would say my favorite thing is I'm a narrative slut, so anything to do with story, like I'm down for. That'd probably be my favorite thing. My least favorite thing, I understand it's an integral part of Dungeons and Dragons, but my least favorite thing is probably puzzles because I'm an idiot as well. So I feel as I'm creating a puzzle, it's like my players are just going to figure this shit out. The whole time I'm just like, I'm so dumb. They're just going to figure it out right away. Like, why am I even bothering doing this? But yeah, that would be my two.
Yeah. My favorite is a kind of a double-edged sword. Is world building. I very much enjoy making factions and like fleshing out their backstory and like how they work. But obviously, you fall into the danger of you go too heavy into world building. It's like, oh, here's just a novella of information about the world. It's like, I just asked what this guy's name was. You can flood your players with too much information
Yeah,
all too easily if you're not careful.
absolutely.
Um, for least favorite though, I was I'm kind of with you on puzzles. Those are like the hardest thing is to
Yeah,
make something
maybe not my
that's
least favorite. I might not have a least favorite, but definitely the hardest thing for me is puzzles.
yeah, there's nothing in D&D I don't enjoy, but puzzles being one of the more difficult ones, but maybe something to throw a loop for those of you that know. I'm a fan of treasure and looting. I, as a DM, struggle and have issues with loot. Actually, I find I just want to like give out all this like cool shit that I find as a DM it's difficult to like pace
Mhm.
and figure out what's a good progression for like when they unlock certain items and things, right? Because you can again all too quickly either A, give your players too much stuff that by like mid game they have everything they need, or B, they have sorry, obviously the other extreme being they have too little, or B, where you just inundate them with consumables, and you have the old Skyrim problem of, oh well, we're not going to use this because we might need it later, and they'll have like 12 spell scrolls and 17 potions and all the stuff they're never going to touch.
Yep. It's a bag of holding full of
Yeah.
Yeah.
potions clinking around.
Yep.
My
Oh,
biggest
your
concern
rocks.
with awarding um loot items or magic items or anything like that is especially if it's randomly rolled, but if you handpick it, probably even more so. But to just you know, to a similar point of having consumables that don't get used forever and then whatever. But just trying to come up with a way where you're trying to plot in or make sure everybody's getting kind of an equal share of items that fits for them, but then they don't, and then you find that one player's kind of gravitating to being the loot item whore, and then some other
But I'm an
players maybe aren't
artificer. I need to
getting.
be attuned to I need every magical
Yeah.
item,
So
DM, please.
and then and you might put in an item, and I mean I guess you could as a DM just make this item is specifically for them. It only works on this particular class or whatnot. That's not unheard of. But it is a little frustrating when you populate your campaign with magic items, and you're you know award them to your players, and you had them specifically handpicked or you randomly rolled them or whatever. But basically, I think it more so applies to when you're hand placing. Like, I'm gonna put this in there because I think it'll gravitate towards and help this person out. I'm gonna give it to this person. I think he really needs a little bit of a power boost to kind of be up on par, and then that item doesn't go to the intended player, and you're just like, fuck.
Yep.
Because now it's like I want to start
can't give a
implementing other
second
items.
one.
I want to boost you. I want to get you because I'm rewarding magic items. It's the game I run. But then if you're not getting them, it's defying the purpose in which I'm awarding them because you're not getting the power boost I want. So now I'm tempted to offer you more, but that's just going to keep boosting you guys even further. I don't know. It is frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, I've learned more towards more and more now, like specifically manufacturing, like looking, oh, these players have like magic weapons, like at certain points being like, oh, well, this person doesn't have a magic weapon yet, so we'll give them, maybe it's not a +1 because I don't want to just like, okay, now you all have +1 weapons, now you all have +1 armor, but like this is like it's a magic weapon, so it overrides resistances, but maybe it has some ulterior effect. Or oh, you maybe this person has a weapon, but this other person doesn't have magical armor. It's like okay, throw something in there, right? You kind of hand pick based on what your party has kind of amassed already, and just see like, oh, this player's underperforming or they don't have something cool yet. Let's kind of throw something in for them.
Yeah,
It's
you
kind of
try that, and then it doesn't always go to the
yeah.
hands of the player you intended
And
for.
it's like,
That's
oh, this fighter would love this special magical sword. And then the party barbarian is like, big smash, rah!
give
And
it.
then
Yeah, you're like, oh, okay, great.
yeah,
it. So I get it. That is pretty frustrating.
yep.
Anyways,
Do we want to do one more?
yeah, I think we can do one more and
Yeah,
wrap it up.
normally I have some questions written up, but I don't have any this week.
Yeah, and I think our main discussion went a little bit long because we were so angry. So
Yep.
we'll do one more topic and wrap things up.
One more than we have. Saucy asks, "What's the best and worst moments you've had in a game?" Which we've kind of sort of touched on, briefly. Um, I can start with at least I know my worst one. I think best one I've already touched on, but I guess recently I'll say as a player, to give away. Maybe I'm slightly self-centered, but Marsk's in Fate and Destiny, the encounter in Baldur's Gate when the party kind of came out ahead when he was deciding on whether or not to hunt down Red Terry and whatnot. Remember that argument in the streets, and then him getting memory his memory altered right then. That was a pretty good collection of scenes. Worst moments probably in the Gears Lament when I set a puzzle in front of the players that I didn't really intend on them completing because they didn't have all the information, and they sat down for about an hour and a half and brute forced their way through it and succeeded eventually. And it was great they succeeded, but I don't think anyone felt good about it, myself included, because it was just an hour and a half of just, okay, try another combination.
Yeah, I remember that actually.
Yeah, that was rough.
That was rough. I don't know, man. I feel like I've answered this in a previous bonus action.
Yeah, we already
It's
talked
so hard
about
to
our like our favorite moments or our best moments. I can't think of like a least like a
Every time you shoot as Tarek.
every time I pull the trigger. Yeah, there we go.
There you go.
Every time I
That's
shoot
it.
a gun.
Every time I play my class, I hate it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I would like
Man.
to. Oh no, okay.
I don't know if I'm just drawing a blank or if I'm just the best Dungeons and Dragons player ever, but I can't. I
I'm
don't
trying to
know.
think of some cool shit that we haven't talked about before that sticks out to me, and I don't remember what we haven't talked. I remember what I've talked about, and I don't remember. My brain is all fuzzled.
It's fuzzled.
I have no idea. I don't know.
I mean, we did touch on this on episode 1, so I don't blame you if
Yeah.
there's not anything that merely comes to pool. It's just I know I don't think I brought up the puzzle. It's just that stuck to me as like you talked about, Nate. Puzzles are hard because they're either too easy or too
Yeah.
difficult. There is very rarely a good middle ground because it's that old adventure game thing of, oh, this makes sense to me, and then in
Right.
comes
Yeah.
someone else that isn't coming from the same
Or a
wavelength.
group of people. Like
That's super true.
when you get a group of people together, there's so much problem solving going on at one time. Like
And they're thinking of they're thinking of the room just before, they're thinking of the room ahead. There's all these other things the player's thinking of that. Yeah,
Here's what I'll do onto that point, because my brain's mush and my brain just refuses to access my memories of D&D to answer the previous question. But I'm going to piggyback off our puzzle discussion here that we've kind of kept toying around on, and I do want to kind of give a tip on puzzle design. One thing that I found works for me pretty well, and I think is what a lot of DMs don't like to do, but I strongly recommend doing it, and that is, well, 2 things.
stealing other people's puzzles.
3 things. Yes, the first one, steal a puzzle. Absolutely. Number 2.
Your players aren't going to know.
Number 2. Have multiple ways to solve a puzzle. Don't just do it down to one, because to your exact point, Bryce, if you have on paper and you think, oh, this is a really good puzzle, here's how you solve it, blah 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 blah, to someone else who doesn't have all the answers in front of them, it might be the most complicated fucking horse shit you've ever seen in your life, and it's really hard to get a sense of what that was going to be like, because in the back of your mind, it all makes sense to you. Number 3, don't have an answer to the puzzle. Present an obstacle. Present a thing and wait for your players to come up with a really cool thing. And you're like, yep, that's the solution the whole time. It works. Yep. It absolutely works.
That's
not a lot of people DMs like that when they're designing. They want to have fucking structure into them, but like, you have a wall and there's a door on it. What do you do? And just let them fucking start getting creative. And if they start doing things like, that doesn't make any sense now. And then they start doing something cool. You're like, yeah, there's this thing that happens. You start making it up on the fly. It takes improv skills, sure, and being able to pull shit out real quick. But that's helped me implement puzzles in so many instances where I don't have an answer and I wait for someone to say cool shit and I'm like, yep, you solved it.
Well, sure. Yep, that was
that's how I'm doing every single puzzle I ever make from here on out.
Biggest tip.
You guys are just going to create it for me.
That's the biggest, especially for people who struggle with designing puzzles, which I completely get. Just don't structure it. Just all you need to do is design an obstacle, design something for your players to overcome, and wait for them to surprise you. And then reward cool shit by saying it works.
Because pretty much a player will never come up to an obstacle and be like, okay, bye, and just like not even try something.
Right.
Yeah. But if they try like 3 or 4 things, then they're either going to get frustrated and keep on trying, or they're going to be like, all right, whatever, sure.
Yep. So, yep.
That's really good. I never considered that.
Again, it
Those
all
are my
comes
tips.
down to the better you are at improv, the easier you'll have as a
Yeah.
DM.
That is
'cause
true.
You have to do
That
less
is true.
work.
But yeah, I think that's going to do it for us. I know it's a bit of a shorter bonus section, but we did have an extended discussion on our main topic there. So plus I'm exhausted. I've had a long day. So I'm gonna
Got very angry.
yeah, and we got angry. There was that. So make sure to check that out. I'm sure the video form of this that'll already be out anyway. So hopefully you've already seen it. If not, then make sure to tune in to our future shows and our Twitch channel. We have now a new Friday show that we just launched, which is bi-weekly, and that Bryce DMs. And we have our alternating Saturday games that are every week. Fate Destiny and Guild's Tale. What is the fucking name of the campaign you just launched? I feel bad for not knowing. I should know.
Until the End.
Until the End, that's right. I'll get there. I'll remember it at some point. But check those out as well. So our weekend games, and then of course we have our podcast, which remains weekly until we get through these unearthed content elements before we're ready to switch to that bi-weekly schedule. But stay tuned for that as well. All sorts of juicy stuff. You can find, of course, our schedule listed below, as well as links to our Discord, where you can join in some off discussion there. Blah 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 blah.
I like the Unearthed Arcana discussions, but maybe discuss new official material.
Yeah, I think we want to get there, but we just there's new shit. You got to talk about the new shit first. That's how these things work.
It is new, right? And it's official.
Oh yeah, you're talking about the Eberron stuff. Yeah, I really want to have
specifically the new class that came out. Yeah.
Yeah,
who
that's a
cares?
good point.
Like specifically
coming.
the new official class.
I can guarantee you that podcast episode is coming.
Oh yeah,
it's sooner rather than later.
Sure. I'm just giving you shit.
But, fair enough. But all right, any other final thoughts before we get out of here? Anything I missed? Anything you guys need to say?
No, just don't forget to use your reaction and leave a comment down there in the YouTube section.
Son of a bitch.
Yeah.
I love it. Alrighty, guys. We will see you next time. Don't allow your psychic shit in your game. It's my final thought. I've said it a million times. Just don't do it. It's frustrating. Or do if I shouldn't put restrictions on you. If that's your kind of shtick, go for it. I don't know.
Tell you what, play a warlock and then take these spells, and you might just be like a wizard.
Maybe you're almost there.
Maybe you're almost there.
You're almost there. Alrighty. Love you, everybody. We'll see you next time.